friends got a story to tell about a young man folks thought they knew so well. Rumors, lies, and all things between. Yeah, they were blind to what they didn't want to see. You can't be a prophet in your own town. Can't climb a ladder when folks keep putting you down. No, you can't be a prophet in your hometown. Takes a bucket load of courage, leave the world behind, in a basket full of effort and a strong-willed mind. Despite the aspersions, he took a leap of faith, and he made his own way to a brand new place. No, you can't be a prophet in your hometown. Can't climb a ladder when the rumors keep bringing you down. No, you can't be a prophet in your hometown.
Today's show is sponsored by Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. Everything you need and more, Lee County's greatest grocery store, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. If you're looking for custom marble, call International Marble. You can reach them at 239-878-2200. 239-878-2200. All your custom marbles throughout Southwest Florida, give International Marble a call. The multi-talented Mr. Ford O'Connell is with us. Ford, an author, businessman, veteran political analyst, professor, and attorney. You can find Ford at FordO'Connell.com, Ford O'Connell on X, often on Fox News, Newsmax, and most reputable news sources. Welcome to Cracker Culture. I am Smokin Joe. Ford, good to see you, my friend. And not only are you on some of those other stations, but our commissioner, Cecil Pendergrass, texted me at 5:30 in the morning Friday to let me know you was on BBC.
Yeah, I was trying to keep up diplomatic relations on BBC. Don't know what I was doing on there, but somehow I agree. Our commissioner was quite taken back.
Oh, that was hilarious. Well, for the biggest story right now that everybody's watching is the conflict between Iran and Israel. And it has many people believing that this is the beginning of World War III. After Israel strikes and targets military facilities and nuclear infrastructure in Iran, protests erupt demanding revenge for the martyrs killed during the attacks. I want to talk about this, but I want to show this clip before we get started, Ford.
انتظار ما این هست که انتقام خون این شهیدان ما و دانشمندان مظلومی که در این حملات امروز همین شهید شدن گرفته بشه.
Now, Ford, I wanted to play that because anybody in the United States that is trying to say that Israel's wrong for going after the nuclear capabilities in Iran, or that if Trump decides to join in, that we're wrong for joining in to try to destroy the nuclear capabilities of Iran. When someone has got crowds and screeching, death to America, death to Israel, I think it says all we need to say. They're our enemies. It's time to make a parking lot out of them, in my opinion.
Well, look, Iran's the only country in the world that every Friday gathers in Tehran to yell death to America. Think about that for a second, okay? Not only that, they are the largest state sponsor of terror around the entire world. They are also responsible for more American deaths than any current regime out there. And remember, when it comes to Israel, there are a couple 100,000 American citizens living in Israel. And United States foreign policy since the 1990s has been Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon, and Donald Trump agrees with that. So, look, I think Donald Trump's absolutely right on this situation, and 80% of Americans agree with Donald Trump that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon.
Well, I think that my biggest concern with most any countries having nuclear weapons is going to fall with Iran and North Korea, because those are two I feel like that have the most unstable leaders in the country. And, you know, people like that, they can get their feelings hurt and stuff and make rash decisions that they don't think through. And that's what worries me with those two countries for.
Absolutely. I think you're talking about what could happen to America and Western civilization overall. And remember, when it comes to Iran and North Korea, they're also being backstopped by America's frenemies, if you will, the Chinese Communist Party and Russia. So this is a big problem. And you're absolutely right, because essentially Iran and North Korea become toadies for China and Russia. And that is a very big problem, because they can deniability. They can give them all the weapons in the world, then go out and kill Americans and say, we didn't do it, when in fact they actually did.
Well, I feel like that we will definitely be ending up playing a role in this war with the nuclear situation. I think it's going to be sooner than later. Ford, what do you think?
Look, I think that President Trump said he's will make a decision within the next 2 weeks, and I think that actually shows tactical and strategic patience on his part. I think he is the peace president, in the sense that he would like to try every opportunity via diplomacy. I mean, he's the one who's gotten us into the least amount of interventions probably in the last 50 years of any U.S. president. I think his track record speaks for it, but he also understands that every now and then you're going to have to show some strength. And we saw that in his first term when he took out Soleimani, who was the head of the Quds Force in Iran. So Donald Trump knows that if he has to act, he's going to act decisively. And I think it harkens back to Ronald Reagan. He's working on the premise, peace through strength. I want peace, but every now and then I'm going to have to get tough.
Well, and it's funny that you say that about him being the president of peace. I just read where Pakistan had nominated him for a Nobel Prize for his peace abilities to try to maintain peace across the world.
Well, President Trump, obviously, as he's pointed out, won't get the Nobel Peace Prize, even though he's done a heck of a job and remade the foreign affairs landscape. And the reason is because the Peace Prize only goes to liberals.
I agree with you. Well, Ford, we got so much more to come with Iran and Israel. And, you know, there's fallout little players that's going on. We've seen the Taiwan-Pakistan conflict that didn't last long. Are we going to see more of that in other, like, smaller countries?
Well, yeah, I think the two things that you're keeping an eye on right now is obviously Iran and Israel, and then China and Taiwan. You know, India and Pakistan, they're both nuclear powers. You know, Pakistan is being pushed a little bit by the Chinese Communist Party, who's funding some of the stuff in Pakistan. But India, like us, is very concerned about the Chinese Communist Party going forward. And that's why India is going to be a big ally for the United States, not only militarily, but also economically going forward. And that's all attributable to Donald Trump. He understands that you couldn't have a Pakistan-India conflict because they're both nuclear powers, and that needs to stop immediately.
Well, Ford, you know, I want to ask you a question about what's going on over there in Gaza and stuff. And we see a lot of humanitarian efforts to bring aid over to Gaza, because we've seen a lot of too. The Greta Thunberg thing, total stunt. I mean, we're delivering about 10 times the amount of supplies that she was claiming to bring over, and it was a total PR stunt. I think people like that are trying to go into a conflict-riddled area for media attention. I think that there ought to be somebody put a stop. Well, they did. Israel put a stop to it, but I think that people should be stopped before they can get started. That's insane. Putting untrained people in that type of situation is just absolutely ludicrous.
Hold on, you're breaking up a little bit here.
I said putting untrained people in that type of situation is no military background. I don't think Greta Thunberg's been in the military that I know of. So, I mean, you know, I would deny her even, did they have to get passports? They just jumped on the selfie ship. I don't know.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. Boy, that's taking it to doing it for Instagram to a whole new level. Okay, but for the last decade, this woman has lectured us about climate change junk science, and now all of a sudden she's defending Hamas. I mean, I can see how you could go from climate change to Hamas, right? Because that somehow makes logical sense. And then this doofus, okay, decides to then say when the Israelis stop her that I'd been kidnapped by Israel. Boy, so badly kidnapped that Israel brought them supplies and food and then transported them back home. Boy, terrible Israelis, right? Actually saving her from herself, because trust me, when it comes to Hamas, they don't give a fig about climate change or whatever nonsense she's pushing today. And that's the whole problem. Everything has become a PR stunt. And she doesn't seem to understand that this is a real conflict and people do die. And yet they'll do anything for 5 minutes of fame. It's absolutely sickening and it's a disgrace.
Well, I know BB said he was going to make them all watch the video of October before he let them release. And in that being said, Greta refused to watch the video. That goes back to the liberal leftist mindset, is we don't want to see what actually happened. We want to keep our narrative going. You don't want to look at, you got the proof, but you don't want to see it because it don't fit with what your narrative is to get your popularity up.
And yeah, and part of that is this belief, this anti-Semitism. I mean, not only is it in the rise in the United States, it is brutal in Europe. I've been over to Europe a couple of times, and I've been taken back recently about how anti-Semitic they've become. And you're absolutely right. I mean, they don't seem to understand that, Hamas kills people, butchers people, throws people from roofs, doesn't really stand for anything that these liberals stand for. And yet somehow they're going to come to their, aid every single time in the media. I mean, it's like all these people that'll say, oh gosh, U.S. is wrong with Iran. Like, I'm going to stand up for Iran, because I can't wait. Because if we do enter this conflict, I promise you, there's going to be some liberal that's going to be like, I stand with Iran. That's just unbelievable. They don't seem to understand that if they walked over there, there is no freedom of speech, and they would have their head cut off for saying half the crap that you're allowed to say in America, which is why we're the greatest country on earth, because you can say whatever you want.
I totally agree. Well, Ford, I'm going to bring it back into the United States for a few minutes. The peaceful protesters are back, doing peaceful arson and looting in L.A. Across the country, the No Kings protest took to the streets during the celebration of the 250 years of the U.S. Army. Many Democrats leaders have impeded law enforcement in an obvious political stunt to say, look at me. Ford, I've watched this. I didn't even pull a video clip because it's on every TV in the land. I've watched this ad nauseum. And the thing that I took away from most of it, there was no kings in those protests, but there was a damn lot of queens out there, brother. A lot of them. And
yeah, I don't understand this whole line of thought from the Democrats on no kings. If Donald Trump was truly a king, is the Democrats' claim, okay, he wouldn't have nationwide injunctions blocking his directives. He also wouldn't need to go to Congress to pass the new tax bill. I mean, this is the most ridiculous nonsense out there. But what I think is even crazier is the fact that Democrats are so unhappy about his quote ICE raids, okay? And by the way, in the first 100 days of his presidency, 75% of the people that have been swept up in these ICE operations have either had criminal records or pending charges against them. This is not just people who cross the border illegally. These are hardened criminals. And when you do not allow ICE into the jails, which is the whole definition of a sanctuary city, can you imagine in blue states and in blue cities, what they're saying is, feds, no, you can't stop and come into our jails for the illegal criminals that we've detained because we just do not like Donald Trump. Think about that for a second. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know how these officers have the patience they're expressing in these protests, because I don't have that type of patience for it.
Well, they trust me. They would like to tell the truth, and you saw this with the Los Angeles police chief, who basically said, "Look, I'm glad the military is here to protect buildings and federal operations because we need a backstop." And he knew darn well that the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, was like, "Don't engage them." And then she's out there going, "It's peaceful." Really? Is that why you've had curfews? Is that why you've declared unlawful assembly on multiple occasions? I mean, this is like the summer of love again. Okay, things are burning, and they're like, "Well, it's mostly peaceful." I mean, under that theory, you know what? January 6th was nothing more than a riot that just got out of hand.
Well, like I said, I watched too many of those videos of protest that was going on. And the common thing that kept coming back to me is some of these live streamers would ask these people, "So you're out here, so what are you protesting for? What is the reason you're out here?" And the majority of the people could not give an accurate reason why they even come. And there was several, I guess the queens out there in the No Kings Parade. So we ain't even sure, but it was a chance to show out. Somebody actually said that on a live stream. And
well, because if you follow the money trail, you start to realize it's sort of these George Soros-esque groups that are actually funding a lot of these protests. And the whole point of these protests are basically to take down Western civilization. And then the other thing is for the people that aren't being paid or aren't organizing, they have such ridiculous Trump derangement syndrome that if Trump, came out and said the earth is round, they'd spend the next 3 weeks trying to tell you it's flat. I mean, that's how ridiculous this is. That's where it is. I mean, honestly, think about this for a second. If Trump said tomorrow the earth is round, CNN would spend 3 weeks trying to convince you it's flat. That's just where we are. And it's really, really sad because Democrats, what's so crazy is Democrats want to control what you say and what you think. I actually heard President Obama say that recently, going, the problem is we have to basically settle what a fact is. And by the way, we should control what you say and think. I can't believe this guy taught constitutional law, let alone was a president of the United States. Doesn't seem to understand the First Amendment. They hate the First Amendment because they basically want to indoctrinate you to their belief system.
I agree. And like I said, it's pitiful. A lot of these young people out there that are, jumping up, they don't have a clue what they're actually out there rebelling against. And then you see one got shot in the eye. And then I seen another guy got one of his bungee plumbs blowed off by a rubber bullet. I mean, you're going to mess around and find out. And when you get out there spitting in the face of these officers and pushing them and throwing stuff at them, hey, you're going to get what you came for. You don't want trouble, they're going to bring it finally. And I hope that these people will learn a little bit of respect for the men and women in uniform that are trying to protect us for.
Well, that's exactly right. That's FAFO, and God bless the police officers in Southern California that have to put up with the worst politicians who basically say, "Let the people burn the city down because it's going to help me politically." I mean, that's absolutely insane. You realize it's average people's lives, small business owners, immigrants themselves who get hurt in this nonsense. But it's all being done because they hate Trump, and these politicians, particularly these deep blue cities like Los Angeles, think that if I let the people burn down my town, somehow it'll help me politically. This is where we are in the 21st century in American politics. It's downright insane.
I agree. Well, and in speaking about some of this thing with these mentally deficient people that's got these ideas about sexuality and everything, the Supreme Court made a ruling about transgender surgeries in Tennessee. The rest of the country should take notes for it, but as you can imagine, the liberals are way upset about this.
Yeah, this was a 6-3 decision on the Supreme Court. And what I watched, of the 9 Supreme Court justices, 7 of them are parents. And among those who are parents, the decision was 6-1. They understood what was going on here. And here's the thing. The petitioners basically were arguing, wow, you're violating the 14th Amendment, equal protection. Well, you can't because, see, equal protection protects sex, race, national origin. Gender is a made-up term. We keep coming back to this. Further, the Tennessee law that bans this for minors was based on age and medical procedure. So therefore, Tennessee's right. And I hope every other state does this, because the problem I have is, look, if this is what you want to do after the age of 18, fine. But you and I both know that 12-year-old kids, they get a new fad every week and they're going to change their mind. I mean, the idea is that this is something you can't go back from. And that's why I think that this is very, very smart. And frankly, all the other states should do it. And this notion of having someone, allowing a kid who's like 12 to chop off their is absolutely ridiculous.
The world's just become a cesspool of stupidity.
You know how you can stop all this nonsense with these minors, right? Is you just get Trump to support transgender surgery. Then they won't be doing it for minors.
Yeah, you're probably right. Well, I want to ask you, Ford, what's the latest border crossing numbers now that Trump and Homan's dropped the hammer?
I mean, let's talk about dropping the hammer. In May 2024, under Joe Biden, there were 117,905 who crossed the southern border illegally. In the month of May 2025, 8,725. That's about a 93 to 95% decrease. Now, mind you, this was done with no new laws. All that you had was, all you needed was, unlike the Democrats said, you didn't need new laws. You just needed a president to enforce the law. But the most incredible statistic came out, and that is nobody was released into the interior once they were detained. And that is, I think, as far as I know, or at least as far as Fox News' Bill Melugin says, who covers the border, probably the preeminent border reporter right now, we've never seen this in U.S. history.
Right.
Because last month, I believe there were like 3 released. And the reason why they were released is because of a medical complication. So let me tell you, promises made, promises kept, and it's driving the Democrats absolutely insane. Because remember why the Democrats want to release people into the interior. They want Congress to throw up their hands and amnesty them so they can have an entire new voter base. And something I always tell people is, when we take the census, and this is something the Trump administration is trying to fight, is when we take the census every 10 years, illegal aliens are counted in the census. And that's how blue states keep their power in the electoral college, is because now they're counting non-citizens, because all their citizens have, fleed to red states, particularly Florida and Texas.
Well, I agree with you. I think Trump's done an amazing job. What is the polls saying about the president's approval numbers with Americans now, Ford?
Well, I've always told you there's a lot of what I call these junk polls out there, okay? And you see them. There's 2 types of polls, actual polls and polls that manipulate opinion. And you look at the polls at CNN, they're like, oh, Trump's underwater with approval. Well, I'm going to tell you, the 2 pollsters that got it right in the 2024 presidential election say that Trump almost has an approval of +7. That is Insider Advantage and Rasmussen. And they keep going, Americans may not always agree with everything Trump says, but boy, they certainly love what he's doing. And look, the 2 biggest things were secure the border. That was the number 2 issue in the 2024 presidential election. We have the most secure border in American history. Okay. Number 1 issue was bring down inflation. Well, not only has inflation cooled for the 4 straight months he's been in office, but personal wages have gone up. So Donald Trump has done everything he said he'd do in the top 2 issues, and it's unbelievable. Somehow CNN and the legacy media have to create new lies every day to keep up with Trump because he's being that successful.
It's unbelievable, Ford. I just, I tell you, the people that realize how effective Trump's been are elated. The people that just won't look, they are always going to throw shade, as the young people say.
You're right. But I think the most amazing thing is just drive up and down Tamiami Trail. The gas prices have dropped. I remember under Biden when they were like almost $5 in some places. And I'm like, holy smokes. Now I'm like, every time I drive by, I'm like, oh, price is so cheap, I'll just keep filling up. I mean, but that goes to everything, whether it's the products in your store or in anywhere else. 80% of the economy touches oil and natural gas. So you want to drive that inflation? Improve the drilling. Drill, baby, drill is what is driving down inflation in America. And once again, hat tip to Donald Trump. And what's so crazy about these leftists who want to get rid of fossil fuels? First of all, you don't have a replacement that's actually going to power this economy, and particularly in AI, because the race for AI is a race for basically global domination. Okay. And that's going to require even more energy. But the other thing is, you know who isn't buying into this Paris climate nonsense? China and India. So if they're not buying in, why the hell are we? And let's be honest, because a lot of people there says no Republican wants to destroy the environment, but you also have to make a living and feed your family. There needs to be a balance, and the Democrats don't understand this.
I agree with you, Ford. One thing I want to throw a curveball at you that I didn't tell you I was going to throw in you, but before we go, I know you spend a lot of time up in Mass. I think you're going to be up there for a few months. The big story is this Karen Reed trial. You want to weigh in on this?
I don't know what the hell went down there. Okay. Remember, she is not guilty. It's a little bit, actually, she's guilty of drunk driving, but she's not guilty of murder. And I think that's the big thing. What I was so amazed here about this is most people don't realize she had one hell of a legal team. And the other thing is every day after trial, instead of going out the back door of the courthouse, she came out the front door and basically was her own PR spokesperson. I mean, I don't know what happened there, but all I can say is from a legal perspective, man, it's sort of like in a football game. She worked the refs every which way to Sunday.
Well, I tell you something that, people that maybe not follow like the obscure media the way I do or whatever, there was a kid that really made this happen. And people that don't know who he is, it is a little podcaster named Turtle Boy. And this kid went out and he got the people to support Karen Reed. He went out and done his own research. He went and he proved that the cops had lied. This is just an outside podcaster to the point he even got arrested. It's actually incredible showing, but if you really dive into this Karen Reed thing and some of the obscure streams that was out there, that boy probably helped her to get off of these charges.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. And that's why I said not guilty, because, again, I don't know what happened, okay? But a lot of things just didn't add up, okay? And therefore, you can't lay down a murder conviction when you just, when 2 + 2 = 5. You just can't have that. And I think the jury understood that. But I do agree with you. They worked the refs. They worked the media. They had podcasters, everything else. I think what we're going to come back and have a real question is what the heck is going down in that P. Diddy trial?
You had to throw
that one might take a whole episode right there.
You had to throw that in and talk about how much we use petroleum. You had to throw P. Diddy.
Hey, you got Epstein, Weinstein, P. Diddy. This seems to be going on everywhere.
I agree. Well, Ford, on that note, it's about time.
The man's trash.
The part was how they were saying, literally, a hurricane could take your home away, but the man's trash. That is unbelievable.
The man's trash.
Man's trash.
All right, so we're here with the man's trash. The first story I want to cover is Florida Attorney General held in contempt of court. And this is Attorney General Upmeyer. I'm going to play a clip and then we'll talk about this for you.
In contempt, a federal judge found Florida Attorney General James Upmeyer in civil contempt because of a letter he sent to police in April. The judge accuses the Attorney General of defying an order to pause enforcement of a new state immigration law. The judge says the Attorney General violated a directive to notify police agencies to halt enforcement. In that letter, Upmeyer argued the ruling should only apply to him and local state attorneys, and said he could not prevent police from enforcing the law. Earlier today, Upmeyer posted on X, quote, "If being held in contempt is what it costs to defend the rule of law and stand firmly behind President Trump's agenda on illegal immigration, so be it." Judge Williams ordered the AG to report when enforcement occurred. That report is due in 2 weeks.
Ford, Upmeyer's not nobody's biggest fan, but come on, he done the right thing here.
I got to tip my hat to him. You're absolutely right. Now, I'm going to try to break this down as easily as possible. In the federal code, we have a law called 8 U.S.C. 1325. Basically, if you're in the United States illegally, it is a crime. The Democrats don't pretend it's a crime, but it's actually a crime. And all Florida has done is, and this is in a bill that was recently passed, is basically codified federal law into state law. And last time I checked, Florida was part of the United States. And therefore, if you were in Florida illegally, that's the same as being in the United States illegally. I don't know what this judge is talking about, but this is another situation of lawfare 2.0 where a judge just does not like Donald Trump and the fact that Ron DeSantis and the state legislature basically said, well, this is the law of the land. Let's just make it the law of Florida. I don't see the problem here.
Well, like I said, I can't think back to many
This is a federal judge, by the way. This isn't a state judge. That's the key point here. A federal judge who knows federal law is saying that a federal law enforced in Florida is somehow not valid. That's insane. It would be one thing if this was a state judge, but this is a federal judge.
Yeah, like I said, it blowed me away, and especially, like I said, I mean, because again, we talked about this off there. I don't think Upmeyer's ever impressed either one of us that much, but this is.
I mean, this is hat tip. I mean, he's jumping on the grenade and taking it for law enforcement. And she's like, well, you have to report who you swept up. I mean, that's the whole point. This is the problem with this judge, okay? This judge is obviously, just based on what she said and what I've read, is a political activist with a black robe. Your job is to interpret the law, not basically undermine the governor and the president of the United States.
I agree. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that too. Well, he had 2 weeks or something to get it in. So, well, I want to talk about Cape Coral for a second. The organizers who brought the recall petition to remove Cape Coral's worst mayor in the town's history were unable to acquire enough signatures to reach the 10% of the electorate, which I said in the beginning this was going to be a hard time to do when, you know, it's off season and most of the residents are up north enjoying their cooler summers. 7,000 signatures were needed in a 30-day time frame. Organizers gathered 3,867 signatures, falling short of the 7,000 needed to move forward. Now, Kyle Lahamadou is the boy that runs the Take Out the Trash Committee of Cape Coral. He has vowed to continue on and try to do whatever he can to work toward getting this mayor removed. And I applaud him for that effort. You know, I think that we brought this out a couple years ago before we talked about that mayor's questionable past, to say the least. You know, and you know, I wish the boy had done this in the heat of season. I think he would have been able to succeed. But you know, I guess you got to wait until you get that next bite of the apple, Ford.
Well, my response to that is, and this is what I want to tell everyone who wants to buck the status quo, some of the corrupt politicians in Southwest Florida. If you're going to do this, focus on one, okay? And not only that, get people together, raise the money, and buy a paid canvasser, okay? That's how you can do this. Yep. And you'll save a lot of time and effort. People say, well, that might be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. You know what? Do you want them removed or not? If you do, you got to be able to get enough signatures to do it. And sometimes like 7,000, my advice is get 8,000 because every single one's going to be scrutinized.
Well, I think you got to do it twice. You got the first run, you got to get 10%. And I think the second time, the second recall, you got to get 15%. And I do think that Mr. Lahamadou had stated that he wanted more than the 7,000 on the first one. Unfortunately, it wasn't successful. And, you know, and I kind of didn't feel like it would be, just because you have too many people here in Southwest Florida that are afraid of retaliation. And you had a former council member post on social media, Dan Shepard, and say, I can't believe these businesses would allow people to set up and sign up a petition to recall our mayor. Over half to support our mayor. Well, I, in fact, turned around and asked Dan, I'd like to see that poll, because I don't know that half the people support Mayor John Gunther at Cape Coral. So, you know, as almost intimidation when you're telling people, oh, well, you're liable to get ostracized if you go against the mayor and he succeeds. It's a bad business, and there's a lot of that here in Southwest Florida.
Well, two things. Yes, I agree with you about the intimidation. Let's remember it's also a violation of the First Amendment. The idea is that you're supposed to be able to do these things and talk about politics in public without fear of intimidation and retribution. The other thing is remember I was talking about this earlier? Manipulation polls. I promise you 50% do not support Gunther. Okay, I tell you that right now. I'm not even sure 50% even know who he is. Let's start with number one, okay, let alone supports him. So the idea that that's what I was talking about. That's not a real poll. It's a manipulation because they just want to have a talking point. That's how this works. Basically, you know, the old guard in Cape Coral operates no different than CNN. They're basically going to scare you and manipulate you. And then everyone's like, you know what? I'm just not going to get involved. And that's what happens. Apathy is how you destroy Southwest Florida. You cannot have apathy politically, because if you don't, we're going to go by the wayside. And I've told you this for a couple of years now. We are in the heyday. We are the hot spot between us all the way to Jupiter doing the U. This is the heyday of South Florida, and especially Southwest Florida. And, you look at every single magazine, they tell you, one of the best costs of living is to live in Fort Myers. One of the best places to live, period, is, Naples. I mean, it doesn't get any better than it does right now for us. I mean, except for the hurricanes. So come on, guys, let's get our act together. If there's really bad politicians out there, focus on one, take them out, break the cycle of intimidation.
Well, I still think that focusing on, if people put their efforts to focus on campaign managers that really control these politicians, they would be money ahead in my book.
Well, you mean the 2 or 3 totals that all work in and around?
Well, maybe the one I'm talking about, the one that's TM Strategies. I think that's the biggest cancer on Southwest Florida we've ever had. They need to send him to Moffett.
Well, aren't they building that new? One thing the AG also did. I'm going to tip my hat once again. I better watch this with Uthmeier, but he is talking about building an ICE detention facility in the middle of the Everglades.
Yes, sir.
There's some other people I'd like to send to that detention center.
Alcatraz, Everglades. Now, and I know that there's going to be a protest out in that area at the old runway out there at the Everglades at David Collier tomorrow. And look, Miss Osceola, she's Miss Osceola. She's put out that protest, and she said, we will not. She said, this will be peaceful. And she said, trust me, you will not be welcome here if you're not peaceful. And I'm going to tell any of you people that want to go down to Miss Osceola down there in that area, you're coming into my area, and I can trust you. Black Lives Matter showed up out here and made it about 10 minutes when we ran them out of town. I wouldn't go messing around with them Indians out there.
Oh, no. Trust me. I agree with you 1,000% on that. And I'll tell you, what's that prison that they had in Louisiana? Angola. The reason why this is such a great spot for a detention center is, okay, you break out. Where are you going to go? And by the way, who's going to get you first? The coral snake, the alligator, or the python, Burmese or rock? Trust me, no one's going to want to be out there. They're going to be like, please deport me now.
Look, if you're not familiar with Florida, and especially the Everglades,
which is a special place,
furry worms, it'll burn you up. You got all kind of stuff out here, and if you don't know it, you'll find out real quick what it means to be a Florida man. You know what I tell people? Like, people ask me to describe what it's like, because I've gone python hunting and stuff. But I always I'm like, it's mild Australia in the middle of the Everglades. It is you don't know what the hell is out there, okay? I got boots, I got sleeves on. I'm like, hell no. I mean, I tell people. Then you got the water moccasins. That's if the pythons and the gators haven't eaten them too at the rate we're going. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I said, I grew up here, so it's kind of common. It's real funny when you see people that have, even if they've lived in the country, they ain't never lived in the Everglades. That's a whole. I know. And what scares me? The one thing that scares me, I get off topic. It scares me is this rise that we've seen of crocodiles. Yeah, that is, because I'm going to tell you something. The gators are bad, okay, but they ain't like the crocodiles.
The crocodiles will come after you. The gators generally want to be left alone.
I'll just be quite honest. Alligator don't scare me.
Well, that's my point. You see them walking across the golf courses all the time. They're like, coming through, leave me alone. The only time that you got to push back on the gators when they come in the neighborhoods, possibly eat the dogs or screw with the children. I mean,
but a caiman and a crocodile are more aggressive than an alligator.
Oh, much more. I mean, they're eating. What was the one? Somebody was doing a whole story about they couldn't figure out where the dogs were going, and they realized that they were getting eaten off the dock. And that's the problem. I'm just waiting for somebody to take one of those snakes, and I'm sure it already has happened. Take one of those snakes, whether it's in Australia or India, like a cobra, put it in there and find out the goddamn thing can actually live in the Everglades.
Oh yeah, that's
all hell.
I guarantee you, if they brought some of that out here, it wouldn't be no. We get new species all the time, especially coming over on cargo ships from different countries with fruit and I can remember banana cargo trailers of bananas come in. I've seen spiders when I was younger coming off them banana crates. I ain't never seen in my life.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, it's just, I'm like, this is dangerous because just about anything that we don't like can pretty much survive in the Everglades.
Well, Ford, it wouldn't be the man's trash if we didn't talk about the Lee County School Board. One of the stories I want to talk about is Lee County School Superintendent Denise Carlin is spending public funds in a project reaching 7-digit numbers for the safety of our children. Not a chance. This is purported to be a private garage with bulletproof material to prevent public exposure as she enters and exits the school district. Some people are already calling this Denise Carlin's own personal bat cave. Ford, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And if you're too afraid to come to work, get a different job.
Didn't we talk about no kings earlier? This is sounding a lot like kings. Well, in this case, queens, as you pointed out.
It's just unbelievable to me. She has talked about how she has cut all this spending. And if you can cut spending on one side, but when you're increasing it by adding new administrators and directors and building your own personal bunker to come to work, I mean, this is just getting ridiculous for them.
Well, if you could balance the ledger, then this wouldn't be a problem. And the worst thing that happens in education, and I'll say this, whether it's public school, private school, college, junior college, you name it, when the administrative state of an educational institution grows, nothing good happens for the student or the children. Just trust me when I tell you this. And that's what's happened, is that the administrative state of Lee County schools has grown so much, teachers aren't getting properly paid. The kids aren't learning a darn thing. I mean, look, how many years in a row do I have to read that essentially Lee County public schools are some of the worst in Florida? We have 67 counties, and we've got some really bad counties. Okay, and the fact that we're near the bottom, that ain't great. And that's really, it shows you how crooked and corrupt the people who run Lee County schools is. With the amount of money we spend, honestly, we should be sending some people to Harvard every now and then. I don't say Harvard anymore because I don't know if they're teaching anyone anymore. But at least we should be sending people to the University of Florida or Miami, for that matter. Don't play football.
Well, our last story, and I saved this purposely for last. A lot of people know I put a post out. My wife and my daughter were in an accident the other day, and pretty severe accident. Luckily, they survived with limited injuries and, bumps and bruises here and there. Well, I put a post out because people had seen the Cracker Culture van and it was wrecked, had been T-boned, and I was getting a lot of calls. Is everything all right? Whatever. So I put a post out and explained to people that everybody was okay, whatever. Well, I get a message, a direct message now from Armor Persons, who was the former chair of the Lee County School District and still a seated member. And it blew my mind because Armored Persons put out a post, and it was, I'll just show you a little video, folks, because he denied he put out this post. He sent me a message denying, he publicly said he didn't put out the post. However, I have what he put. He said he didn't send it to me directly. So let's just see if he did or not. Here is a video of my phone. Bear with me. This is about a minute. I want everybody to see this. I'm videotaping this, so I've got the records. Armored Person sent me a message. He's trying to claim now that he didn't send him a message. Here's the message straight from Armor. Here's what he sent me. After hearing about my wife and daughter being in an accident and then being possibly injured. Now, he's trying to deny this, but let's just see. This is Armored Persons, is who sent it. And if you click on that, no, let's see. Let's click on who sent its Facebook profile. We got it here. Facebook profile. And who do we get? Oh, imagine that. No, you didn't send it, Armor? What is this, buddy? Armor, you're a real POS. You know what you did, and you should be ashamed. And everybody that supported this sorry excuse for humans should be ashamed. This is a person who can laugh at the injuries of a woman and child who has done nothing to him. Now, mind you, Ford, my daughter is a student in Lee County School District. And the thought that her possible injuries, and nobody at that time knew the extent of them, Ford. I mean, my wife was still in the hospital. Nobody knew the extent of these injuries, that Armored Persons could do that. Well, he automatically got backlash. I know I can't tell you, I had thousands of comments about how wrong he was for it. Well, I didn't put that. I put a post out saying how I'm glad nobody. After I put the post out saying that he had done this, he then put a post on the original post, not a direct message, but oh, that looks bad. Glad nobody was hurt. Armored Persons is the lowest form of scum in the world. Now, I know what he done for it. He's seen it, and if you can look on the phone when he sent it to me, he had copied it and there was him laughing and went to send it to somebody else, probably his daughter Jenna or his son-in-law Dave Mullica. Maybe, I don't know, but he accidentally sent it to me. It just shows, Armor, you can try to hide it, but everybody knows what low-life scum. You're just white trash with a good-sized bank account, Armor. That's it.
Look, a couple of things. First, glad that Jesse and the crew are okay. I think that's the most important thing. And I think you're absolutely right. Injury, death, cancer, whatever it may be, that's no laughing matter. And it doesn't matter if it's somebody you don't like. That's just common decency when it comes down to it. And, but based on what you've shown me, if I'm Armor, you should own up to it. Just own up to it and be done. That's what you do as a man. That's all I got to say. I got no other words because,
Armor just thinks he's above the law. I mean, he thinks that so he can do anything and just get away with it. And I don't know if it's because he thinks his daughter's a state representative and everything's just the fields of lilies in the person's pathway. But I'm going to tell you, I'm not as upset about this as I would have been if something had actually really seriously happened to my wife or my daughter.
Well, that's why it's good that Jesse and the crew are okay.
And for Armor's sake, it's good that Jesse and the crew are because the people were upset about this. I mean, realistically, Ford, I put that post out and I checked it the same day and within a few hours, and it was already 9,000 people had watched it, and I can't tell you how many comments. People do not like when elected officials who are using taxpayer-funded money for their salaries can come out and find humor in the demise of one of their constituents. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's unethical, and you should never do it. Armor is just not smart enough to realize how bad what he done was.
I'm with you. I question there's a lot of politicians in Southwest Florida. I question if they like their constituents at all. So I'm right there with you. I've said my piece. I'm just glad that everyone's okay. And look, it's just injury and death are just not a laughing matter. Even if it's your neighbor you hate, it's still not a laughing matter.
No, I agree. I mean, we know a lot of politicians do. We don't agree with their politics, but when something happens to them, we really don't even discuss it unless we wish them well. And I mean, I can tell you, we've done that several times on this show. People that we've actually been trying to expose had issues in their family or in their personal life that were something tragic. We've sent out, well wishes. We never
try to show restraint where we can. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
kind of the Christian ethic, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, Ford, I know you got a big piece coming up. You want to tell the folks what's about to come out with Ford O'Connell here?
Yes, they'll be running at the Hill either in the next couple of days, and it's basically an entire opinion piece about how Donald Trump's immigration policies are resounding success. When it comes out, I'll ship it. I'll send you the link. But I read the final thing after you submit it, then you make edits and everything else. It's pretty solid. I think it's going to be very useful for people to simplify what's going on. And also I explain why the Democrats essentially like to use the word undocumented, because as you and I know, nobody's undocumented. Okay, that's an entire lie. What they're trying to whitewash is the rule of law that, by the way, passed through Congress and was signed by a president. So this is the whole thing. The Democrats are essentially using this to import a new set of people because their policies are so out of date with the American public.
Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing that.
I tell you, Tom Homan's doing a hell of a job.
Absolutely. I cannot disagree at all. Tom Homan is he's one of my favorites I've seen right now.
He keeps us up. He keeps us up and stays for all 4 years. The man deserves a Presidential Medal of Freedom. I'm just, to be honest with you. I mean, I've known him for a very long time, but every day I'm in awe of something new. And the reason why he gets so heated on TV about this, people are like, oh, you're coming in too hot. It's because the man actually cares about the lives, and not just the lives of Americans, the lives of the migrants too. And people don't understand that. I remember he told me a story, like literally took him back. He had a trailer, okay, with a whole bunch of dead, basically they suffocated the migrants, right? And underneath all the migrants, you had a mother sitting on a basically 2-year-old baby trying to protect it. I mean, when he tells you that story, you're just like, there's no words. Like, you're just trying to hold back, like not crying, because you can't believe how horrific the stuff that this man has seen. And this is the problem. Human trafficking and the cartels. And unfortunately, Donald Trump's the only one who's even talking about potentially finding ways to go after them, because human trafficking, no one really wants to talk about it, but it is a big crime, not just in America, but around the world. And it's really, we've got to crack down on it. It's just terrible. It's modern day slavery is really what it is.
I totally agree. And we should all thank God for Tom Homan and Donald Trump. Well,
Amen.
Ford, I want to wrap this up, and I appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, my friend. I will see you again real soon. Folks, I'm Smokin Joe. I hope y'all have a very wonderful week until we see you next time. For Ford O'Connell and Smokin Joe, we'll see you next time. Love, peace, and gator grease.